channel, my name's Adam Smith, and today I'm kicking off a showcase for Unstoppable, the latest in the solo hero series from Renegade Game Studios. Unstoppable is a fast-paced solo cooperative roguelike where momentum is everything. You're going to build your deck, craft powerful combos, and keep the action flowing as you face endless waves of enemies. Can you harness unstoppable energy and outplay the chaos, or will the threats overwhelm you? The purpose of this how to set it video is to help you see all the steps visually to set up Unstoppable on the table. It'll also show you the inside of the box, which is the first thing we'll focus on, and how I've got things organized. Here's a look inside the box. You'll see it comes with dividers to make things nice and easy to organize. You'll also see some of the cards are sleeved and some of them aren't. On page 2 of the rulebook, there is a full sleeving guide to show you exactly which cards need to be sleeved. And it's worth mentioning, no matter which type of cards you are sleeving, ensure that they're all facing the same way. For instance, these ones are full-size cards, so they're quite easy to sleeve. You're just going to go ahead and put them in. And then other ones here, like the starting cards, are going to have a cutout on the right-hand side. And then you're going to get into the threats, and the threats are a little different. They're going to be facing the exact same side in terms of the cutout, but they will be facing backwards. Once you got the card sleeve, per the sleeving guide, you can go ahead and use the dividers to divide things out. Quite nice. You got the starting cards here. You've got per the different heroes in the game, then the different types of threats. You have the core level all the way from 1 to 6, upgrade cards, and then of course the boss cards towards the back. Once you have your box organized, we can dive into this setup together. I'll be taking you through each of the steps visually, and the setup instructions are broken into 3 major phases. We have the common setup, the player setup, and then finally the boss setup. So we're starting with the common setup, and that's going to have a focus on the core decks, upgrade decks, and token supply. So starting with the core decks here, we have 6 of them. You'll find them behind the green dividers that you've already organized inside your box. They're varying levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So go ahead and shuffle those independently and place them in a row. Next is the upgrade deck. Simply find that behind the blue divider. Go ahead and shuffle up all 36 of the upgrades and then place the entire deck face down off to the side of where there'll be 6 spaces right underneath the core decks for 6 upgrades that you're going to reveal from the top of that deck. The upgrade deck's been shuffled and placed face down. I'm going to draw 6 cards from this deck and place 1 under each of the core decks. It's worth mentioning these upgrade cards are not tied to the core decks above it in any way, shape, or form. It's just simply for layout. The final step of the common setup is to get your tokens within easy reach and organize. I placed mine inside of a game trays. It's worth mentioning this component is not part of the box whatsoever, but these damage counters are. You've got them in 5s and 1s, and then the credit tokens are in 3s and 1s. The next section of setup is the player setup, so we're going to grab the player mat and also place 2 markers on the health track and the armor track. Your character's armor is at 0 and your health is at 10. Next, it's time to choose your character. You can choose to be the Reluctant Bodyguard, the Cybernetic Bounty Hunter, the Corrupt Councilman, or the Teenage Viren Activist. Before you make your selection, be sure to flip over the character cards as there's some flavor text for each one of them to help you decide, as well as telling you what that character focuses on, and the starting cards we'll have to gather when we select one. Once you know which character you want to be, place the portrait card in the portrait slot on your player board, and then next you're going to gather your character's deck. That deck's going to be comprised of 7 cards, which are going to come from behind the divider listed as starting, and I'll show you those cards in just a moment. They will be comprised of 6 strike cards and 1 spare credits, and they will have enemies on the opposite side that you had already sleeved prior, and then you're going to go ahead and find those 3 cards I showed you moments ago on the back side of the portrait here, specific to your character, behind the divider for your character, and you're going to mix all those cards together by shuffling them. So behind the starting divider, we've got ourselves 6 strike cards, and we have that 1 spare credits card. And for our Reluctant Bodyguard, our 3 character cards are Guard Squadron, Price of Business, and Cultivate Power. Again, you'll find these behind the divider for the character. These 10 cards make up your character deck, which is then shuffled, as I mentioned, and now placed in the deck position on your player mat. The key thing to remember when you place them in this position is that the threat side needs to be face up. And now we're going to go ahead and draw 3 cards in hand from the top of the deck. Here are the 3 cards that I drew up. I got 2 strike cards and a Cultivate Power card, which looks pretty cool. It's worth noting these are core side up in terms of what's facing me when I'm holding them in my hand. The threat side is facing away from me. Now let's populate the battlefield, which is going to come from the draw deck where we have our threats, and these threats are going to be drawn one at a time until you have 3 of them to start things off in this battlefield area. You'll see threats with an arrow telling you that all the threats you pull off the draw pile are going to go into this battlefield area. So let's draw 3 and place them to the right. It's worth mentioning it doesn't matter what order they're placed in over here. It appears we have a number of thieves coming after us, so these are known as the active threats, which are in the battlefield area. There's also what's known as an on-deck threat, and that's the top card of this deck here. When the threat phase, when we get into gameplay, comes around, this card here will not be coming after you, but these ones will be. However, you can actually point your attacks towards the ones in the battlefield, or also impact the one on top of the deck here. Now your character is going to gain 3 credits, which we place in the credit area below the portrait card. Action point discs are next. There are 2 colors to choose from. I'm selecting blue for my playthrough. There are 6 of each of these colored tokens. We're going to remove the white ones out of the fray. We're going to gather all 6 of them. 3 will sit off to the side, and 3 will go in the designated area on your player mat. And the final step of the player setup is around the level discs. Here's what the level discs look like, and you'll see one is going to fit inside the other, so go ahead and just place it inside, and then make sure the arrow is pointing off to the right and place the entire stack above the core level 1 deck. We're now in the third and final phase of setup, which all revolves around the boss. So we have a selection of 3 bosses to go up against, and they recommend for your very first play to go up against the Harbinger. Flipping over the boss mat, you're going to find some flavor text at the very top, but the most important to focus on right now is the setup instructions at the bottom. The first line of the setup here on the back of this boss card tells us to find the 10 cards for this boss. The icon is depicted. You can find it as one of the dividers inside your box. It's these cards right here to the right. The next line of setup tells me that I need to place 1 Order Acolyte and 1 Order Archivist into my player deck, shuffling them in. The 10-card deck is divided into 5 Order Archivists and 5 Order Acolytes, so I'm taking 1 of each. They're being shuffled into my existing player deck on my dashboard. The rest of the 8 cards are now shuffled together and are placed threat side down beside the boss board. The 2 boss cards I took from the boss deck are shuffled inside my draw deck, and as you can see, the Order Archivist landed on top. The final setup instruction on the back of this boss card tells us to construct the threat deck, which is going to be comprised of these 2 icons worth of threats. So we're going to find, of the 3 different threat types in the core box, we're going to be finding these 2 and combining them, shuffling them together to create the threat deck. As you can see, very easy to find these threat decks behind the dividers. They're going to have the matching icons as asked for by the boss setup card. Shuffling these together creates your threat deck and will place it up near the core level decks. And just like that, the threat deck is all shuffled up, placed to the left of the core level decks, just above the upgrade deck. With all this boss's steps now complete, we're going to go ahead and flip over the boss card. Now find the danger marker, which looks like this, and place it in the 0 position at the top of the track. The final step of setup is to decide what difficulty level you want to play on. You can choose normal, hard, or expert, and that's going to impact this track in different ways. Now, as the danger marker moves throughout the game, it's going to eventually land on this final spot here, resulting in a loss for you. What ends up happening is, based on the difficulty level you've selected, you'll be skipping over certain colored spaces. So if you play on normal, you're skipping over all the spaces with the green border. So basically, you'll go 1 by 1 all the way down here, but once you get to this 4th one here, you're going to skip right over top of the 2 last green ones and straight to a loss. Now, if you're playing on hard, you're going to skip all the spaces with a yellow border, which is going to have you moving a little bit more often, and it's going to have you skipping over this space here and this space here, which is actually the same amount of spaces, but you'll see one is going to impact you in terms of something that is beneficial. You're not going to be able to take advantage of that anymore. And then the expert level, you skip all spaces with a red border. That's really going to make things tough. You'll be moving at a much quicker pace down this track as you get towards that loss. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the How to Set Up video for Unstoppable from Renegade Game Studios. I really hope this helps you get the game out of the box and onto the table to enjoy in a solo capacity. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and be sure to join the Discord or the Facebook group to discuss this solo game as well as many others with the community. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.